Hi, Barbie and Paul. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Thanks for having us, Selwa.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here with us today. And yeah, it's really a pleasure. I mean, it's been a long. I've wanted to have you for a long time, so I'm glad this is happening. But before we start our conversation, can you each introduce yourself?
Yes.
Sure. My name is Paul Raffaele.
And I'm Barbie Bertisch, and we go by Love Injection.
Yeah, we run a label, a magazine. We're a DJ partnership. Sometimes we do remixes and dabble in production.
We have a weekly radio show on the Lot Radio. It's been on the air for close to 10 years. Well, for 10 years now. And Love Injection officially kind of started in February of 2015 as a fanzine, evolved into the radio show a year after that. The label came at around 2020, 2021. We've done some special projects, like we did a book with the Klipsch Museum of Audio History called Dope from Hope. We've done some just like other things here and there, but that's kind of the gist of it. Just printed media, physical media, music, and radio.
So, Barbie, you grew up in Buenos Aires and then moved to Miami, then New York. Like, I'm really curious about like what brought you to the city, and also like what kind of music you were into back then.
Okay, yes, and that's correct. So I was born in Buenos Aires. I lived there until I was 14. My family and we moved to Miami following a gigantic economic meltdown and lived in Miami for 8 years. And it's in Miami that I started clubbing at around like 15. At the time, I was going to, I guess, like what they would call today, like indie sleaze parties. I hate that term, but whatever. And then sort of found my way through friends to like, I first heard Louis Vega in Miami and it blew my mind. I honestly moved to Miami under the same, to New York under the same sort of premises of the sort of Sex and the City generation. I studied fashion design in Miami, and the creative industry at the time, I'm not sure what it feels like now, but at the time was zero. There was very little work prospect for me working in fashion, so I set my sights on New York. It was through various and endless jobs and internships that I ended up kind of switching work to do more or less what I do now, like as like a air quote day job or creative practice, art practice, sort of work practice. But I found through a Miami friend myself back in nightlife in New York and particularly at a party called Joy. And that really lit the fuse and reconnected me back to music in a way that like really pushed me into DJing and pursuing that more seriously and exploring that. So that's kind of the path.
And Paul, like you're from New York, from Staten Island, and you were also going to the Loft and Joy. Like, were you at the time, like in, like, were you doing design? Like, what was your life back then?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was born in Staten Island. Design and music kind of found me at the same time when I was young, like just around high school. A friend in my neighborhood needed some help with their sort of mobile DJ business, and kind of taught me Photoshop, and I helped him with like some flyers and things like that. He was also like a club promoter, so got me involved in some of like the local like teen nights that they had at our local clubs. And so, yeah, through being a part of that scene and going to those events, I was aware that there was sort of beyond Staten Island, there was this other thing in like the city, you know? At that time, also the bigger clubs, like the adult clubs, the 18 plus clubs in Manhattan, also had no ID nights, like teen nights, which is kind of crazy to think about today in like the age of surveillance and what that what that would mean. But it was an opportunity. What I saw, I see it as it was a positive in that like it exposed young people to like music at a super early age, and it kind of like created an opportunity to put hooks in people for music. And that's exactly what it did for me. Like as soon as I was able to like figure out a way to get into a big New York mega club, I did through friends and their their siblings and stuff. So yeah, going on from there, my first internship out of school was at Giant Step Records out of college. And I got to do things like pack and ship CDs, manage playlists, write press releases and stuff like that. And that lasted a summer. Right after that, I got a job at Pasha, New York, which is in the headlines a lot today because there's like a new of it opening that has little to nothing except for the name to do with the older iteration. But that first Pasha New York, a franchise of the famous Ibiza brand, was open from 2005 2015, and I was there from about 2007 to close, to when it closed, 2007 to 2014. And I was basically a junior graphic designer, and that taught me a lot about the clubbing landscape at the time. It never really felt like Pasha was my scene. The music kind of followed the mainstream trends. Like when I did start, the music was a bit darker, it was a bit more techno oriented, a bit more tied to New York legacy. But what I was able to see was sort of the evolution of EDM and how that kind of like grabbed hold of the nightlife economy in New York, brought it to a peak and crashed down. That's an aside. That's something that I kind of watched as an employee of this club, but I was also sort of actively working against it, doing my own parties. So like around the time I was at Pasha, things were sort of in the underground, were shifting more to Brooklyn. And I started throwing parties with friends that eventually led me to 718 sessions run by Benny Soto and Danny Krivet. They sort of took me under their wing, booked me for some of my first gigs in the basement of Santos Party House, which is a club that we love and we miss. Mr. Saturday Night threw some of their first parties there, indoor parties. And through 718, I started to become sort of obsessed with disco and the history of New York dance culture. Started reading the books and doing my research. Found the Loft eventually, realized it was still happening, but that you needed an invitation. Eventually got an invitation from my friend Jesse Rudoy. Jesse brought me to my first one. And through the Loft, the community sort of expanded. I always say like 718 was like, is still home to me, but was my introduction. And I didn't have much community there. Like I had friends, we would go all the time, but we would go to the parties, have a great time and leave. And then the Loft and reading about New York club culture sort of added all the context I needed to understand where 718 came from, et cetera, et cetera. And so the lineage of these like New York first parties, the garage, et cetera, and how it all evolved. So it was at the Loft eventually that I'd bump into Barbie, and I didn't meet there, but we were going there around that time in 2014, 15. So when we met, she was like, "Do you go to the Loft?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Do you go to Joy?" And I was like, "No, what's that?" And she brought me into Joy, and we met at the Loft, and I'd take her along to 718 sessions. So it was like our worlds were in a parallel place, but we were just about to.
It's interesting. I'm thinking back too about, I don't know, like sort of all the rich detail of all these places, even like the places that I was partying in Miami, and like this idea that like a lot of things stay the same, but at the same time there's a lot of change and a lot of turnover, especially in nightlife. It feels like 10 years is like a lifetime, like I'm thinking about the first time I heard Louis Vega, which was in Miami at this club called Vagabond, that like was short-lived but so rich and so incredible. And it was like at a time when I would say Miami nightlife was like incredibly rich and varied, and it was a little bit of everything. And at the same time, like it was a very small scene within like a big kind of umbrella city that held so much entertainment because of Winter Music Conference and the stuff that happened on the beach side. We were like the outcasts that like partied in other very like different scene. It was my friend who also used to party in those circles. Her name is Maru Rojas, who brought me to Joy once she moved to New York, and Joy was a very different party experience. For those who have never been, it's in a private loft. There's no cash exchange at the door. There's no bar at the door. There's no bar inside. There's a meal that's served. It is the volume is very respectable for and sort of kind to the body and the ears. The sound system is a sort of state of the art analog, all the way down the signal chain. It's just it's a home like experience as opposed to what I had been used to before. And I was partying in New York, like I've been to like Wolf and Lamb parties, and I've been to Output to see Harvey, and all these things. So our worlds were like really kind of rubbing up against each other,
Hmm.
but they hadn't quite met, and we had a lot of friends in common too. To show you how, again, there's like this sort of macro world and then the micro world. And in the micro world, like we were bound to meet at some point, and we did,
True.
you know.
Yeah, it's like when I was reading like how you met, it felt like a story, like a movie. It's crazy. Who would have known that, like years later, like you would have like Love Injection, Rocco, and like you have a family. It's like it's crazy to think of like all these little instances that happen in life, and then it just makes your whole destiny. And but I'm curious about, like, can you tell us about like how you met? Because I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I was living in Hell's Kitchen at the time because Pasha was in Hell's Kitchen. And like I said, everything was sort of happening in Brooklyn happening in Brooklyn. So I would be there all the time. And for some reason, on like a or a Sunday evening, I was at Academy Records in Greenpoint when it was on Oak Street. And yeah, it was late, so I was the only one in the store, and I was like around in the disco section, and then Barbie and Maru came in, and they came to the section that I was in. And I was going through a period where I wasn't dating for a while, and I recognized Barbie through a mutual friend. This is like early Instagram. Like someone posted a group photo that she was in, and I just saw it as an opportunity to say hello. And I think that was Jeff Robbins, right? I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
Jeff and Will," and she said, "Yeah," and we got to talking, and I think I followed up
On Facebook.
the next week on Facebook, and that's when I had started like I think I had already like sent the first issue to print of Love Injection. And I was like, oh, like she goes to the loft. She knows a lot of people on the inner circle there. I'd love to get like interview some of them. Maybe she could do a column. Maybe she could bring some people in. So I followed up on Facebook and I said, hey, starting this project. Would you like to contribute? Maybe we can go like have a coffee or go to a record store and talk about it. Yeah.
The crew, Maru was really kind of the glue, and I was part of like a group of people that really it felt like family, and they were part of the setup crew at the loft. So I was learning so much about this like incredibly vital foundational sort of blueprint for modern dance music gathering, um through just like being around and hanging out with them. And I asked a few of them if they could provide a little bit about their experiences, wrote a couple, like, had them write a couple of essays. And then right around the time, this coincided with me starting to DJ outside of like our friend's basement. So this whole crew, we were all getting together. I think like Eric and Farley, I don't know if it was Eric or Farley's basement, but in the basement on like Tompkins or one of these, there was a friend who had put together a whole rig, including like, it's probably like a Yuri 1620 or something like that. And we were all just getting together playing records until dawn, like very often. When Paul reached out and I sort of got involved with these essays, I also said, well, I have my first opportunity to DJ out somewhere. I have a date on hold at Battery Harris, which is a bar that no longer is around again. And I said, why don't we do a launch party around it, around the first issue? And that was really it. Invited our friends Thomas Hall and Ryan Kunemura to play with us. And that was sort of billed as the first release.
Yeah.
the launch party for the first issue of Love Injection, which was like February 12 or whatever of like 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the first time we played together. That was the first time the issue was the magazine sort of was in the hands of people, and then it kind of went from there on.
Yeah, it was cute. Thomas and Ryan were really protective over Barbie and made sure that I,
Yeah.
this, like, new guy wasn't trying to, didn't have any bad intentions. That's the vibe I got. I remember from the first day, but they were super nice.
Yeah.
And, they were Barbie and them were super tight knit at that time. So as the magazine started to grow, we sort of plugged into a lot of the things that they were already doing. Like before Kinfolk
94.
Before Kinfolk 94, it was just 90. This is Gabriella for people that know that space today. It was just that corner spot, and it was more of a laid back bar with DJ with decks. And so we started doing like a Monday or a Tuesday night together, monthly celebrating the new releases. But her friends would do that all the time there as well.
It was like,
Became the hangout spot.
It was like $100, mine only. You play all night, Thursday or whatever weekday. And we did that for a while. We did that for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think it's comedic and worth like saying that our first official date was at Northern Lights, but I didn't really know we were on dates. I didn't realize that we're going out on dates for a long time because we finally understood and sort of said to each other, like, wow, we really have no game whatsoever. Like, he had no game and I had no game, and we just were not picking up on the signals. But which is to say that it was very organic, and there were no games. There was nothing sort of contrived or whatever about our relationship. It just very gently and very organically and naturally just grew. It was a thing that we just couldn't be apart from each other. It was evident. So we just started doing more and more together as the time went on.
Yeah, it's very it's very telling because like even with love injection, like the people you bring in, it feels very organic. Like it feels like you always include friends and you make sure like it's not like you're like what I mean I mean in New York you have a lot of people who come and go and they just exploit and like with love injection it was like a community effort, like everyone, like I remember going to the lot radio and seeing the zine and it's like a lot of friends wearing it and it felt like a family in a way, like even if I mean the word scene is and community is it's overused, but yeah, and also like to think of like the fact that you picked love injection as a name, like love, like there's always this root.
Yeah.
I remember we thought about changing the name a few times.
Yeah, but now thinking back to what we would have changed it to, it wouldn't have been any better. Like it was like Love Injection, the name comes from the song from the 70s by Trussell. So this is sort of like in the loft and garage canon song. It's songs that that was playing a lot in New York in the 70s and 80s. We heard it at the loft one day and it just kind of stuck in my head. And when I was making the first mock-ups, I just put it on the cover and it just stayed. It never left the cover. And I think that like I love that it has the word love in it because that's at the center of everything. But when the uninitiated hear it, they think it's kind of like cheeky or like pornographic or like sexy, and that's like what it's not.
It's like really not the
kind
vibe
of
at all.
like their eyebrows raised, and like it's just kind of like maybe that just means that they just would never be into it. Like you just kind of know that's the filter, but it's fine. I've come to like accept it, and like eventually we were playing separately because I was DJing for a long time before I met Barbie, and then there's been times that I was considering different monikers, when I was trying to produce and make records on my own, whatever, and it just became evident that more people knew about Love Injection than each of our names separately, so it felt like it was right to just to just use that on billing
Yeah.
moving forward.
And I mean, it's not to say that 10 years after, I guess 11 years after now, I think about DJing as a duo a lot. And after everything we've been through and in very like how much we've changed over the last 10 years and where our curiosity leads us musically. And I think that even now, like it's still so exciting and challenging to play together. There have been situations in which people have asked us to play like separately, and it's cool and it is flattering, but I think that like we engage in so much dialogue and our relationship is so multi-dimensional that I really enjoy when we play together, and it feels like that is the way that it's meant to be, at least from now until who knows. I feel like now, especially too, and thinking of like what's in a name, where you could just pick whatever, ultimately like the meaning transcends like what it's what you make of it, and not so much like what the literal meaning might be.
Yeah.
Like Love Injection now it's its own thing, and we're grateful for it, and now we don't get to like laugh when we think about what happens when people go to like loveinjection.com as opposed to Love Injection NYC.
Yeah, go there.
Don't go there.
Don't go there. You're at work.
Okay.
Or like do, but in your own time. On a public computer, probably.
From 2015 to 2019, you published nearly a dozen issues a year. So how did you manage your time? Like you were both working full time, and also the zine was free. Like how did you keep it going, and what did you learn like all of those years from running it?
Well, you touched on something earlier about contributing versus extracting, and that was always at the core of our intention with the magazine. Even in 2015, I had felt like dance music had given me so much that I just wanted to do something to add to the landscape, and that was like one of the ideas going into it. So the idea came and incubated while I was during a time that I had a full-time job. I was working at Vice around that time, and I had some time and resources there to kind of explore, and no one knew about it. So of course it was going to be my own investment. Like no one was going to pay for it, advertising. We had no circulation. So it was just like I just figured I'd do that for a while and see what happened, and to an extent people were starting to become interested. Output was one of our most supportive advertisers. They took the back cover for like a very long time. Thank you to Sean Schwartz and Jen and Isaac, Benny, who's helped keep that going. But by and large, it lost money. On special occasions, it broke even. But we've always been lucky to be employed, and so we just always looked at it as a contribution from us to the scene. In terms of time, time management, we were just kind of excited and had a lot of energy, and we were like in our early 20s and like or to mid 20s, and like we just had the time and had the energy. We found the time.
Yeah.
Because I was working until 5-6 every night, and then just get home, order food, and we just work.
Like 1 or 2 a.m. every
I
night.
got off the
Wow.
bad screen and onto the good screen. Like at home, and it was just like, and we just worked till 1-2 in the morning, and it just felt great to be able to like put something out and get real time reaction to it. Yeah.
Also, I think we're just the kind of people that we also really enjoy like manual labor, and this did come like at the time of designing. It was solely like on him, and I'd be like, oh, like how does this feel, whatever. But like once the records now we do it with records. Once the issues were ready, we would like drive to Jersey, which was where our first printer was, pick up pick up the magazines ourselves, come back home, do the rounds and drop off at all the stores, and then like send the email. Like we became very good with process. And then once we were kind of set on a process, like it all became about, okay, how do we like expand the circulation, or how do we add color, or how do we make it, thicker, add more pages, how do we send overseas, and really, and I'm thinking about overseas too, because this idea of advertisement, and we had for a while a really kind of steady set of advertisers, and we were paying ourselves to ship overseas, but for free, so that stores overseas could carry them for free as well. But it became evident, and we were just really draining our bank accounts trying to do that, so we started doing like exchange ads for, I'll send you 10 copies to wherever. And that's kind of how we were able to grow, and just sort of being very rough and ready about things. And eventually we switched printers and got them from Long Island City. But like it all just was about kind of tweaking things here
Yeah.
and there, and about improving even a 2%, a 5%, where we could, up until really the pandemic, which, our printers closed, our advertisers were all struggling. Like that's one thing that we always were pretty set on. If there was like in the event that, and we did have this happen, that like Celine would come and wants to take an ad, cool, you're gonna pay top dollar. And the record shops and the independent labels and the independent businesses that want the exposure are gonna pay little to nothing. And that's kind of how it worked. Um, at the pandemic, we did our first sort of solely digital issue, because
The only one that we ever
yeah,
did. We were really conscious of the money that people were spending on the subscriptions too. 'Cause we were running active subscriptions, so people were expecting something every month, and we felt
a
a
responsibility.
responsibility
Yeah.
to deliver on something, because they were spending their hard-earned money, that was hard to come by during the pandemic on us. So we put like the typical issue would run from like 20 to 30 pages typically. So we put together a 100-page digital zine,
Mhm.
and that was really nice because it was a way for us to reconnect with everyone that we've ever worked with.
Yeah.
And we put that all together, and
And
that
just
was beautiful.
check in with friends and see how they're
Yeah, and
doing,
ask how
like,
everyone.
very sort of raw, unfiltered, like, state of mind essays and photos of the moment, what was going on. I think it was, like, a really, I don't know, we're still really proud of that. But yeah, we've always really enjoyed, getting our hands dirty and, like, shipping stuff ourselves. I think there's just something so kind of, dopamine inducing, or like working with your hands and like shipping stuff and putting labels on things and
Yeah,
stamping. So we
we
still do that as much as we can.
we were already kind of record people before that, but
Mhm.
it also like just spending a weekend at the record store, like going to 15 record stores in 2 days is like super fun.
Yeah.
And you're meeting everyone, and you know everyone, and they're happy to receive something for free that adds value to them. It felt like so
Yeah.
fulfilling,
It's,
and it helped forge real friendships with the clerks. And to this day, now we have a record label that we didn't even know we would have a record label back then, but we know everyone. We just email them when we have a new release, and they support, and it's like really beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm really curious about your, like, what do you think of social media now? Because, I mean, Love Injection was like pretty, like, intentionally homegrown. Like, there was no press cycles, and like everything was just organic. And I'm really curious about like, how do you navigate social media today? What do you think it's done to the culture? Like, when you think of, because the zine was physical, is this physical object, but also it's exciting, and I feel like now with social media, I'm curious about what you think.
Well, we fought against, we had, this was like, again, in the early Instagram era. We looked at this app and we were like, do we even want to be on this? Like, this doesn't make sense for us. Ultimately, we decided to join. But we always kind of said like we're not really going to put like any sort of parts of the interviews or whatever on it. That was like very, very early on. So if you like scroll all the way down, like you'll probably find it. Something we were talking about earlier, if it's a very layered and complicated relationship. On the one hand, we understand how for a lot of people it's a way to connect across borders. If you think about what it's given us eyes into in terms of like conflict and war and shit that otherwise like papers wouldn't cover, like you could argue that there is some very positive things about it, but also, Instagram was supposed to be a feed about your like showing you your friends and their like cat photos and food photos. Like it wasn't supposed to be this like sort of monstrous algorithm driven like hyper optimized thing that like pushed people into bending over backwards to for likes or impressions or whatever.
What it also did was, without us knowing, it put us into groups and without us realizing it, we started, these groups had affiliations and groupthink and stuff that you kind of get sucked into without realizing, without really, it's probably somewhere in those terms and conditions that you accept, that you don't really read. And what it's ended up doing is divided us in more ways than
Yeah.
is healthy or natural
And
for a society.
in regards to ownership and sort of whatever, I'm really just so skeptical of any platform that will encourage you to like post more and be active more and demand more of you, when ultimately like they are the ones benefiting and owning everything that you're producing. The whole conversation about whether a content creator is an artist or vice versa, I no disrespect to content creators, but I think that a lot of us have been fooled into thinking that content creation is art because it is ultimately, again, owned by someone else and sort of created in the context of or in pursuit of. And it is not just, some of it might be a reflection of where we are today or whatever, but it's just so informed by like the need to capture somebody's attention. And a lot of times it's outrage or it's lowest common denominator or it's whatever, and it's changing our brain chemistry. And as parents now, like that is just a whole nother can of worms. Yeah, I mean,
We use it.
with caution.
Yeah, we use it with caution. We try to be self-aware about how much time we're spending on it, how our complex thoughts and topics are informed by it. We try to ask ourselves those questions. We abstained again, like from the beginning, like in the very beginning, we hesitated to even be on the platform at all. When we entered the platform, both as like individual people, but also as like a love injection, the page, yeah, we got sucked in and we were somewhere on that on the spectrum of being sucked into Instagram up until fairly recently. I think we started like really questioning
Yeah.
why we're here, what we're doing, what the goal is, whether or not, I think everyone's asking themselves the question, as the algorithm changes, are we changing with it? Like everyone who's jumping on to do face to camera, serialized, like they're starting their own series is just because they know that that's what the algorithm favors. And hey, like they need to get their message out about themselves as a DJ or what they're promoting. And I think that's, if that's done in a way that is um, adding something to the conversation and the culture, like that's fine. I feel like um, just just pushing against it, just for to be stubborn about it, it doesn't really serve anyone. So recently, like we have a bunch of projects finally, like after a lull in our kind of creative output,
Because of
because
parenthood.
of Parenthood, we suddenly have things that have been incubating that are ready to come out, and like a compilation. Our DJ schedules a little heavier than it used to be. Our record label is more active now than ever, and so we have responsibility to the artists and our partners to like just get the word out and make sure these succeed in whatever metrics they use. What success means, and so yeah, we'll jump on and get in front of the camera like dorks to put through, you know, to get across our message. Like, we say that about ourselves because whatever. But whatever we need to do to get the message out is fine. It's just like not content for content's sake, for this kind of amorphous aim of growing with air quotes to no limit. We have a specific goal. Like, we wanna make sure that our friends and family know that we're working on a project
And people
because
outside that
yeah,
don't know us to be able to find it, because whether
yeah,
we like it or not, like, this is the way of that people communicate today. Um, we get to thankfully choose how to interact with it. Um, and whether that's a big cause of frustration sometimes, for sure, we're not immune to that. Like, "Oh, hey, like, we gotta post about this party." "Oh, do you post a flyer first? Do you post a photo first?" Like, I hate thinking about that. So dumb. But on the other hand, for example, and I'm grateful that, like, we came up just came up, such a weird term, but whatever. We came of age as DJs sort of outside of that, and what we built is outside of Instagram. Like, we have real parties, real music, real issues of a magazine, a real tangible thing that we make outside of Instagram or TikTok. The the air quote, or sort of the product, it's not something that we make for the app for eyeballs. We use it as a way to communicate. And this was something that we were talking to our friends Peter Orlov and Kate Glicksberg. We were just talking about how, like, so many people today learn of, say, house music, but it could be anything, right? They learn about it because a reel was suggested to them, somebody who digested the history of house music in 90 seconds. And to me, that's fucking insane. Not because people don't deserve to know, but because it's such a warped, sort of collapsed way to learn about something that is too big for the medium and too complicated and rich and foundational. And, like, how is one to digest the birthplace of techno in a reel, and, like, the impact in the world and the history and all its characters and the color of this story. I just think that, like, it's kind of a dangerous, and there's a lot of people who can speak to this way better than I can. The context collapse, filter world is his book, is great. But this idea of collapsing culture and commodifying it to put it in a reel so that it benefits your impressions, I just find that really, like, sad and dangerous for the people who lived it and were part of it, who have a story to tell and who have relationships with it, for this sort of making a monolith out of a topic, when all of this is just so, it's a lived experience. And for the people who are on the other side, perhaps learning about it, and it's almost a disservice because they don't get to, like, live it and connect with it organically. They just, like, find out about it in passing in the midst of, like, recipes and, reels about your friend at the rave over the weekend, and, DIY hacks for IKEA shelves, and it's just none of it makes sense together, and it makes the connecting with it that less special. I don't know, I feel like because of this overabundance of information, we just become desensitized to the real thing, and there's something so special when you, like, go to a record store or you're at a magazine shop or whatever, and you pick up something and it's real, and there's no one else trying to sway you to purchase it or read it or stay with it or whatever.
but that also
Yeah.
there's parallels to sort of early internet culture where it was a place with a lot of information, but you still had to go dig for it, and still had really satisfying. There was a really satisfying feeling when you found it.
Yeah.
Now it's being presented to you on a silver platter between these other random things, and it just doesn't connect as closely
Yeah.
or as deeply. There is a counterpoint to what you're saying, though, that kind of links back to, okay, well, this is the style of communication of our time, and I
Yeah.
think that the forefathers and the people um, that do carry this culture, sorry, that I'm just thinking about like how important it is for young people to be talking about, for instance, the Paradise Garage in IG Reels. Is it like, yeah, some of us lived it and some of us didn't, but the fact that young people are talking about it and are excited about it still says something about how powerful it was, and that we need
Yeah.
young people to be interested in it. So the fact that they're interested in it and about it, I'm sure is gratifying to folks that are still around that helped build that, and they see that you know kids still want to talk about it.
I do. I do see it. I just wonder in the way that you and I got into subcultures, like what does a subculture mean today?
But
You know, the era of like subcultures no longer being regional, and like that's fine, but
yeah,
every subculture reaches the mainstream so fast because of just how something, the sort of viral possibility of something, you know what
yeah,
I
I think
mean?
it just comes and goes quicker now. That just speaks to the technology and how fast it's moving in our short attention spans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like you learn about something, you make a reel about it, you slap the logo on your chest, you wear it. Like, are you like? Has it changed the course of your life? Have you made a left turn from what you were doing to do this new thing and take that path all the way to the end? That's what happened. Not tooting my horn or whatever. I'm just saying, like when I discovered dance music culture, that's what happened. Like Staten Island had none of that culture. When I found it, it gave me a path for my life, and that's why I'm so grateful
Yeah. We
for it.
could talk about the social media shit forever.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah, it's
honestly, I relate so much, and yeah, because it's like it's like also people are driven by like followers. So then you don't know if it's their intention. Like, oh, do they just want views? That's why they're like condensing this thing. It's like you don't feel a care, and that's why like I really love like everything you've done with Love Injection, because you have this archive of interviews with people who created, it's like from the source, like you have their words. I mean, I know a lot of young people who respect, but there's also a lot of people who just want view. I don't know, they want to become. I see the frustration. I
Yeah.
definitely feel
I
it.
mean, and to kind of take it back to your question from all this like word salad and sort of therapy session we just had, I think the biggest problem is that on a sort of wider industry scale, people first were like checking out how many like listens you had in your SoundCloud mix or how many followers you had in SoundCloud account. Now it's really just like how when bookers are looking at social media numbers, and we know that this has been the case for a really long time, this becomes a problem because you can entertain and keep people's attention on Instagram, but can you do the job of the DJ? Our job description is come here prepared, play music, read the crowd, read the room, improvise, transfer something, a feeling, our energy, whatever your sort of artistic mission is that night, and send people off home, give them a good time, give them something real, and then they can just go off into the sunset. Like ultimately that's it. But I think that like this sort of visual element of this DJing practice has really just sort of dominated in this sort of bigger, I'm talking capital I industry thing. It's just really become very visual, and Instagram obviously plays a huge role in that.
I'm also curious because you talked about parenthood. It's funny because it's like I'm really curious about like how has it changed you? Like what have you learned from becoming a parent, and do you feel like now you found your groove?
No.
yeah.
What do you think you're
To some extent,
a
like we
little?
can accept bookings and make plans and like find and we like without our parents helping in the way that we're lucky to have all four parents and
Grandparents.
Yeah, well, our parents, I mean, and they are present and invested and interested in helping, and that is like the only way that we're able to continue doing a lot of things that we're doing. So we're very grateful for that. Something we talk about a lot is
Code
um,
switching.
yeah, code switching is tough from, especially with day jobs. It's like to code switch from being a professional to being a parent and being a DJ, that there's some element of performance and research and preparation. We find to be the most difficult thing, but I'll let Barbie talk about how it's physically
Okay.
changed you.
Well, I mean, I think, oh my God,
Because you're the
therapy.
one who physically changed the most.
I definitely physically changed the most. I put on about like 40 pounds during pregnancy, which is to say that I was very happy DJing and oh my God, how do I even start? Okay, I would say net, what's changed is everything. Period. My relationship with music's changed. My ability to focus has changed. My body has changed. My relationship to loud noises has changed. And I felt that, and I mentioned the weight that I put on, whatever, because I carried Rocco inside of me through a few gigs into my pregnancy. I think I stopped DJing when I was like 6 months pregnant, 6, 7 months pregnant. There was a time that I just, you have to become sensitive about like how loud the monitors are and all these things. And I didn't really think about that prior to pregnancy. What I was thinking about prior to getting pregnant was more about how to make emotional room for motherhood and for a child and what that would mean. I had this thought like we were at nowadays like Theo Parrish was playing and it was like 9 in the morning on a Sunday and I was like, how is this going to be possible for me if I have it? And and like that was it. And I remember just having like a really big kind of mini crisis at that moment, like at the club and being just like, all of this just feels incompatible. Like, I don't know how to do this. So, my kind of mission, in a way, from getting pregnant up until now, still remains just trying to put those pieces together. In a way, like, I've become a way more focused person when I'm DJing because this is the only time I get to just say what I have to say, to feel what I have to feel, to communicate, and to sort of get that spiritual lens that DJing feels for us. Because like we don't get to be out every night of the week, every whatever, whenever we choose. Our relationship with time has changed in the way that like, we have the label, we have the zine, we have this and that in our design sort of practice and all of that has to happen in like way more compressed chunks of time. You just have to, and at least that's with us because we're sort of try to be efficient people and we're sort of overachievers in a way. Like if we were just more chill people who like really kind of took a more laid back approach to life, which unfortunately is not us, I think that wouldn't be a thing. But I think our relationship with time has really, really changed because time is like the most precious resource that we have. We often think about other things, but like time is really just like so vital. I still haven't found a way to go back to music production and I haven't found a way to go back to journaling. And I've tried not to beat myself up about it. It just feels like impossible right now, like truly impossible in the way that like we're trying because they just demand a lot of like creative energy and long sweats of time. And that's just simply something that we don't have right now. And I know that we'll have it later. And that, our son being 18 months right now, it's like it's all about him, and I get to spend, he's gonna wake up from his nap in an hour and I get to spend the rest of the afternoon with him. And that's fucking sick. Like I'm never getting that time back. And, like when he's in school and when he's older, playing with friends or whatever, like I'm gonna look back at this time and be like, thank God I had these afternoons with him. Because like I can work on a record some other time. Whatever. It's not about me anymore, you
Yeah.
know?
And also we have mentors that have shown us that our careers can last well into, older age, like into our 50s and 60s. And so, we have no fear of time. We, you know, we've dedicated this much, of our lives to music, and it'll always be that way. And our careers, if we're doing the right things, if we've our hearts in the right place, like there'll be a place for us when we have more time to dedicate it, to it.
It's funny, the dichotomy
Well,
of time, though, because
yeah,
it's like it's like it's the micro and the macro of time,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It's the everyday shit that needs to get done, but it's also just understanding that, like,
Thing about Francois, whose son just graduated college, and he's like has a flourishing career. Same with Colleen Murphy, who has Ari's 18 now, and that's just beautiful to know that like that could be us.
yeah.
There's
Louis
Louis, yeah.
and Anane.
No, I was thinking about energy and how we always say that like before having a kid, uh, DJing would allow us to kind of like
Mm,
expel energy, like to leave everything out there. But we often now come into the gigs exhausted, and so now DJing fills us up, um, and we share that, in whatever
yeah.
way we could.
In a way, we kinda need it more than ever because being able to just have abundant nights out and, have access to this thing wherever we want, like, sure, yeah, you can get a babysitter and you can do this and whatever, but, like, I laugh because one of the things that we didn't realize or, like, no one tells you and it's not in the fine print, it's like, you can go to bed at whatever time you want, but your kid's still gonna wake up at the same time, you know? And so you can go to bed at 5, 6, 7, or well, your kid's up at 7, or our kid is up at 7. So it makes us cherish every opportunity to share music that much more. In a way, it adds pressure to us because it feels like it has to fill our tank and it has to fill our cup. Um, and that's something for us to work through, you know? But like we know that coming into it, we just want to like make the most of the time that we have together because we so need to feel like ourselves even though everything else has changed. It is just a way for us to feel like we are still us as a couple, as DJs, as artists, as members of a community, um, with our friends, etc.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You mentioned before we started the recording that you went to Detroit recently, and I'm curious about how was that, and also like you have the show on the lot every Saturday morning. Like, do you bring Rocco with you sometimes?
Yeah, with the radio show, our situation with Rocco is always evolving. Like schedule's always changing and things like that. So there was a point of time when he was younger where we can just kind of bring him and hang him, put him in like a sling and just do the show, and he'd fall asleep maybe, or it was very chill. But now that he's like a sentient human with like opinion and a little bit more of a rigid nap schedule, um, yeah, he's not that down to just stay still and hang out with us. So we've had to change the format a little bit. Like only within the last few months, we've recently decided that instead of both attempting to kind of white knuckle this situation and like hand him over back and forth every 2, 3 records and keeping the format exactly the same, we would like Barbie would take a week to herself and I'll hang out with Rocco and vice versa. Then there'll be one week where we do it together, either hour for hour or whatever chunk makes sense. And then there'll be one where we give to a guest just to give ourselves a break.
Mhm.
So that's the flow that we're in right now. And thankfully, yeah, we've been with the lot so long in Francois. We're so close with the crew there that they let us like stream from home,
Mhm.
which is a huge help. So when we can, we make it to the kiosk. And when but on the regular, more regularly now, we're
Yeah.
streaming remotely, which we learned a lot about during the pandemic. So we've been like trying to tweak and make
Mm.
our home like audio situation like the best it can be.
And Francois, the owner of the lot, has been a huge help in kind of getting us set up at home. But I mean, all this, and so we speak to it from our perspective, but like the juggling or whatever, it's really just with a kid, like, you can't really be in 2 places at once. It's, like, really hard, and ultimately, this is in service of, like, us being present as parents and us being present as people behind the booth as DJs. So, he's, like, way more stoked to go to the playground on a Saturday morning while, like, one of us is playing music, and the person who's playing music is, like, delighted to have no interruptions. So, again, it's like you wanna involve this person as much as possible in your life, but there are just certain things that, like, maybe he just doesn't wanna listen to music right now, and he'll tell you, and, like, that's okay. You have to be okay with that, you know? So, that's kinda some of the things that we've been just sort of playing. And then Detroit, you mentioned Detroit, um, it's just so inspiring. I don't know, I mean, do you wanna talk about it? Because I feel like you probably have more words about it, but
Yeah, no, it was super inspiring. We this year we returned at the invitation of our good friend Caesar Toribio, who was like our closest friend and collaborator, and he for a few years now has been throwing a Monday party at Spotlight, his BDA party that he does all over, and we were happy to accept and return. I think for me, I was going just as a dancer for a few years back in the mid 20 teens, with no DJ connections or anything like that, just going to the festival and the parties. And then right when I sort of like got interested in the loft, as those who go would know that one of the there's 4 or 5 parties a year, and one of them is on Memorial Day weekend. So that became sort of a tradition that I stayed in New York then, from that point on, for Memorial Day. So, but as we've evolved and things have changed, we accepted the invitation, and we were really excited to go back, play for the first time together, and just check out as much as we could in the short 48-hour window you know,
we carved out.
we carved out with Barbie's family to watch Rocco, and it was, yeah, super inspiring. Everyone was so sweet. It was a really concentrated group of great people that you kept bumping into at different parties. It was inspiring to see Caesar do what he does best in a different city. He played every single day for different parties. He's
Mhm.
built such a great network there. He has real friends out there. And
I think
what else?
I was really inspired, in a way, like, New York is so just hyper developed, and it has such a just, like, saturated scene in a way. Um, it's always interesting if you have the privilege of going to other places and participating in any way in whatever they have going on. I think one of the most inspiring things, it just feels like Detroit sticks to their own, and like they in the way that people and brands and whatever just like throw money at New York, and it's just kind of feels sometimes like too much. Um there's sort of like a purity and a sort of pride in the way that, like, Detroit really just kinda sticks to what they do, and it feels like, own the submerge in underground resistance politics and owning the means of production, and, you know
With Archer being in Detroit, Archer, the record pressing plant,
Yeah,
which services a lot of U.S. Active house music labels, dance music labels. Um, with them being so close, it's always incredible to go shopping
for
anytime in
records, yeah.
Detroit. But like all the local labels are well stocked in all the shops, and you're seeing stuff that maybe isn't like promoted that crazy, promoted on social media, or that are brand new for that weekend. Um, and it's just great to learn about what's going on.
It feels like the music is still sort of expansive and improvisational, and there's just like such great music coming out of there that feels like it's unbound. It's like sort of outside of what we kind of hear, which is often, if you get sent around promos or you just kind of go through like the top 100 tracks wherever, and it's everything feels so kind of tired sometimes or formulaic, or you just like you feel like you heard the same record 100 times. Um, there's just such special music coming out of there that just feels like it lives outside of the bullshit in many ways,
And honest in nature.
and yeah, honest music and just honest people doing like their best and just making incredible stuff. I don't know, it's just really inspiring.
You have this compilation coming up soon, the 10 Years of Love Injection. Can you tell us what to expect?
Sure. Well, compilations mean a lot to us. Before I was able to even go to nightclubs, this was in the CD era where you could learn about who these DJs were and what their tastes were like and what they played in all these different parts of the world. You saw DJs' names with places attached to them, and whether the music was representative of those places and those people, and it was just like a mythical. It was a portal. It was a and you opened it up and you read about their point of view and you imagined what it might be like to go there or hear them play. So it's just like this compilations just hold this warm place in my heart. I know the same. It's the same for Barbie, and so doing one was always a big goal, like a pipe dream for us. And so when the 10-year anniversary was approaching, we thought it might be a good opportunity to start pitching the idea around, because we understand that you need sort of an event around for anyone to invest in this thing for us, and that we couldn't handle it ourselves with our own label. So yeah, luckily BBE was interested in working with us. Incredible people over there: Pete, Jeff, Julia, Daryl, Johnny. We met in London a few years ago when we went, and I've seen them in New York a few times, and yeah, believed in what we're doing. So basically, we tried to program it the way we play. It ended up being a 3X LP. So it's a 3-pack, and it's programmed sort of the way we play, which is, inspired by the loft in nature. So it kind of starts slow, builds up to a peak, and sort of like calms down at the end to send people off. So we did that in our own way, and within the limitations of finding music that we could license, and we're really proud of the result.
Yeah, I think with this sort of the arc of the loft or the Mancusian sort of arc in mind, we wanted to make sure that it felt like us, um, and sort of free of being like one genre or one sound or whatever. I think it was interesting and challenging also to try to like package 10 years of being together as DJs into like say 14, 15 tracks. I think it's 14. So instead of trying to like pick a little bit of whatever, we just kind of made it think of just like a night out with us and what it might sound like today. Um, so that's what I feel like it ended up sounding, as opposed to sort of like an archival sort of look back at 10 years. Even though I do think some songs we might have played here and there over the past couple of years, there's still a few things in there that are completely new, or new to the compilation, an exclusive, or from the last few years, or stuff we bought on Bandcamp for the radio. And we wanted to make sure that there was like a way to bridge the work that we do with the radio, like on the radio show, as well as what we do in the club, which sometimes is like tricky to put together because our radio show is at 10 in the morning on a Saturday. And obviously we all know what a club night might feel like. So yeah, it was a little bit of that. A lot of lessons, some heartbreaks, but very proud of it, you know? I don't know. Just see what else. Now we're like thinking about what it might feel like to do another one, and around like, is it a theme or whatever, but for now we just want to like enjoy the fruit of this labor. And it, we worked on it while we were pregnant and while Rocco was born, like all that. So it really just like it's been a long time in our hearts and in our minds, and then it's a long time in production, and now it's finally here. So get to
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the physical permanence, it's just like something that's visible, that has a release date, that will be out, that allows our message to spread wider than what we can do with a DJ set in New York, locally, and hopefully it connects with people.
Mhm.
Um,
And it's cool. I mean, in a way, you talked about things feeling like family. We have Paul designed the jacket, and I sort of behind him weighed in. But the bulk of it is photos from our parties over the past few years, which were taken by Guarionix, uh,
Shout out Guario.
Mario, and to Guario, Federico, and Felipe Zappolini. So the three of them have been sort of a rotating cast of people sort of capturing our parties. And then we got involved for
Mario
the
Federico, by the way.
Mario Ferrer, sorry. And for liner notes, we kind of felt like there was no other person that could probably do this other than Peter Orlov, who knows us and has been with us since the dawn of us. So he wrote the liners in a beautiful way. And yeah, I don't know. It's just
Yeah, and we kind of in the compilations that I grew up with, there was always these like gigantic passages of thank yous. Like it was always like OD, but I always loved reading them because it created this sort of constellation. It allowed you to sort of orient who this person is and related to like who their friends are and who their friends are and who they chose to write a little sentence about versus like just mentioning their name or whatever it is. So we did that, and hopefully, it just adds to this constellation of it's just a giant constellation, and this is our contribution on this timeline, but it connects back to all of the others in one way or another. So we're just happy to have something out there in this format. Hopefully, we could do more.
Yeah, I'm really excited, and yeah, thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait for the compilation. And